Hey, how are you?
I'm good. It's nice to see
It's
you.
nice to see you too. A
So you're,
friendly face.
I know you're coming from San Francisco, right? Is that where
I
you are at the
am.
moment?
Mm-hmm.
And I'm just going to introduce you to everybody. This is Sarah Hicks. She's a conductor, but not just that, but she is that. She also is a composer. And we met doing a show called Women Rock that my fans know about. You came in and you conducted for us. Where were we again? I'm forgetting.
We were in Salt Lake City.
That's right.
Yeah.
But you are the principal conductor in Minneapolis.
Yes.
Are you still doing that? Is that something you're well when we pick back up again, or?
It's a weird title. I'm the principal conductor of Live at Or, which is all of the non-classical programming. So it would be stuff
God,
like Women Who Rock. We
right.
produce shows. Um, everything theater to, Ben Folds to Leslie Odom Jr. And then stuff we produced, like I produced a show where we had chefs on stage cooking to me.
Oh my.
Some of it was like performance theater.
You said that you're doing some programming with the chefs, where chefs are on stage cooking to music.
Yeah, we did this last summer. We had this whole program, different chefs, different restaurants, different recipes, cooking on stage. It was like smell-o-vision, with music.
It's so
And
awesome.
we got to taste stuff afterwards. But like the whole point was, musicians and chefs have a lot in common. Like these are skills that you have to develop over a long period of time, that, are hard to perfect and talent for it. So finding those connections and bringing everything together on stage because
I
it's fun
love
and I
that.
like food.
I love that. So do I. My God, especially when I'm sitting home all the time. Um, I will tell you though, that's what's interesting about that, and I agree, is that the thing about music too and food is that it's individual, isn't it? That people's tastes are different, and that you can, have you ever been to a place where someone says, oh my God, you're just going to love this food, you're going to love this restaurant. And you just think, I don't know, like, I didn't love it. Or you love
Mm-hmm,
something
mm-hmm.
so much and somebody else is just like, yeah, that's not my thing. And it's the same thing with
Yeah.
music. You find, so your husband was just in the room helping you with some
Mm-hmm.
technical issues. Do you guys have the same taste in music?
We met in music school and he quit the industry about 10 years ago and now he's in completely different. But we
Wow.
have that background together. So we both like classical music because it was our business for both of us. He listens to a lot of hip hop, rap, that's sort of part of his background. And it wasn't
Wow.
part of mine. So like in terms of popular music, we listen to different stuff.
Yeah.
But it's not that I don't appreciate it. You know what I mean? It's like
Oh,
food. Like you
totally.
can be like, oh, this is amazingly prepared, fascinating food. It's nice, but you can appreciate music. You can say like, well, I wouldn't choose to listen to this every day. Well done. How cool. So
Exactly.
yeah, there's that corollary there.
Yeah, I'm the same. My partner and I don't, he's similar. He really loves soul music, R&B,
Mm-hmm.
all that stuff. And he's on a lot of those records, and it, he's such an amazing bass player, and that's kind of really conducive to that kind of music too, is the bass
Mm-hmm.
playing, and it's where he shines. But I'm the same. It's not really my background. But what's interesting is we've been introducing each other to new kinds of music. I've been
Mm-hmm.
introducing him to kind of what I listen to and vice versa. And we met same way. We met in the symphonies, same way that I met you. And I saw on your bio that you've worked with Sting.
I did. I was on the second leg of his Symphonicities tour, which
Oh my
was
gosh.
2011. So I think we were out for 9 weeks, 39 concerts, 39. It was all over Europe. It was insane. But it was, it's five-star hotels, Sting doing yoga in the sauna
Yeah.
every day. It was an amazing experience. Crew that big and having two rigs out because one rig is ahead of the one that's doing the show. So, two setup, and then this amazing band of musicians,
Wow.
the band, and it was a really interesting experience to
I
have been able to
love
do
him.
that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I bet he's incredible. And I know we have a lot in common. We've taught, the wellness side of what we do. And I'm really into yoga. I also teach yoga, and I've been a huge Sting fan forever. Well, he's such an incredible songwriter, such an unbelievable musician. But
Hmm.
he's also a very disciplined,
Hmm.
kind of kind of private,
Mhm,
person, and
mhm.
he's got all of this longevity and all of this staying power, but you don't really hear stories about Sting being wild out on the road, like even in his
Mhm.
younger days. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah,
He's been
yeah.
with his wife Judy. I'm sorry, Judy,
Trudy. Mhm.
Trudy,
Trudy. Mhm.
for years and years, and he just has this reputation for being a really kind of solid human, which I love. It's not,
Yeah.
it's not always the norm.
No, I mean, he's really grounded. The all the yoga stuff, like, it's true. Before every show, he always, as we join in, he, really disciplined about vocal warm-ups
Wow,
and a a background, and having this, it's really being grounded in who you are and what you do, that
definitely,
you can bring onto the stage, and you see that in him as a person, as a performer. There's no
without a doubt.
artifice. You kind of, what you see is what you get. It's a wonderful thing to get, but I love his performing, because he's just very, as a person, and it's nice to see that, because not everyone does that.
I
And
know. Tell me.
his humanity as a person kind of show through, and I really enjoyed encountering that and being a part of that world for a little over 2 months.
It's amazing. So, we kind of touched on the fact that you do work in Minneapolis, and there's a lot happening there right now,
Hmm.
in the world, and it's affected the whole world. And you know, it's so overwhelming. And I'm just curious, with somebody with such an attachment to that city, and I'm sure so many people there that you love, how are
Hmm.
you feeling about everything?
I mean, it was scary to watch it initially, because when the rioting broke out and the violence, and before that, this horrific crime that happened, that thing
Oh,
too, and it's just, I mean, the police, there are systemic and ongoing and long going. So that wasn't a new dialogue, but that sort of was the straw that broke the camel's back.
right.
So in a way, I'm glad it was happening. Although, again, not the protesting, but the violence that erupted, and people getting hurt, and businesses burning down. Just watching, not being able to be a part of that dialogue, or to know that my friends are okay,
Mm,
the streets. Um, I will say that I'm really proud of my orchestra, the Minnesota Orchestra, that they took actionable steps. They basically removed the police department from their security system, because they were, Minneapolis police to be a part of their security. So they cut that contract immediately,
there you go.
and took steps as an organization. They support what's happening, that they want to be a part of the solution. So,
Good.
I think artists and arts organizations have the capability to make impact in the ways that they can, and it's kind of to do so.
It's amazing, and I agree with you. I think one of the things that struck me is, obviously this is something that's been happening not only in Minneapolis but around the world, particularly around our country. It has happened in New York. It's happened in all of the
Mhm.
major
Mhm.
cities, and um, certainly it's time for reform. One of the things, though, that I did notice was that a couple of years back, and it was a story that I followed very closely, was the story of Justine Damon, the yoga teacher who also was shot by a Minneapolis police
Mhm.
officer
Mhm.
who was in her alleyway. She was a yoga teacher from Australia, and she had come to Minneapolis because she fell in love with a man from there. She met him on retreat. And I'm sure you're familiar with the story. She just basically called the police because she had heard something happening in the alleyway. She thought a woman was being attacked. She ran out in her pajamas. She's probably wearing
Mhm.
something like this.
Right, like that,
Like she probably looked a
exactly.
little bit like me, blonde
Mhm.
girl, just came running out of her place
Mhm.
and
Mhm.
tapped on the side of the police officer's car as they were going by really slowly because it was a tiny, tight little alleyway
Right.
behind her house. And they shot her and killed her.
Mhm.
And that police officer was finally tried and sentenced, and was, I believe, found guilty of second degree murder, I
Mhm.
believe.
Mhm.
It was, and it was really awful, and it took a long time to get him actually
Mhm.
charged. And so I know that the Minneapolis Police Department um, has had some issues. And when I watched this whole thing happen, and I watched people sort of go crazy, and I don't know, one of the things I wanted to talk to you about is because I haven't been able to talk about this publicly. Last week I was away, and so I wasn't able to do a podcast. And I've been watching all of this, and obviously it's been devastating. And obviously we all have very strong emotions, and nobody watched that video and at least didn't feel sick, if not cry.
Mm-hmm.
And, all of the things that everybody felt, outrage. And, but what's interesting, and Mark and I, my partner and I have been talking about this in our industry, my industry, in the music
Mm-hmm.
business as a singer, and him as a bass player, people of color are very celebrated. They're very celebrated, and they're elite. They're elite.
Mm-hmm.
They're
Yeah.
elite in my industry.
Mm-hmm.
And we were laughing because Mark's like, if I lose one more job to a black bass player, you know what I mean?
Right,
And I'm
right.
like, if I lose one more job to a black singer. So we are having such a different experience with regard
Mm-hmm.
to the way that people of color have been treated and have been compensated and have been, you know, really celebrated in our industry for having so much ability and really being put front and center. Very similar, I think, to sports.
Mm-hmm.
Living on the coasts, living in New York, living in Los Angeles, living in London, and all these places, I have such a different experience. And so to see the outrage and the way that people are so, it's no longer become a police problem, right? It's become
Mm-hmm.
an issue of African Americans being discriminated against across the board, and us needing to put
Mm-hmm.
reform in place, right? But
Mm-hmm.
when you have a different experience, like, so, who I don't see a lot of? People who look like you. That's the truth.
In your part of the industry, absolutely.
Do you know what I'm
Agreed.
saying? Right? In my
Yeah,
part
yeah.
of the
Mm-hmm.
industry, I don't see a lot of people that look like you at all now. You're
Mm-mm.
right. In classical music, that's not the case. In classical
Yeah.
music,
Mm-hmm.
there are a lot less people of color,
Yeah, exactly.
right? And a lot
Interesting,
more
right?
people.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So I don't know. I was
Mm-hmm.
just curious if you had any thoughts about it, if that makes any sense to you, if I sound like an idiot. What do you
No,
think?
I'm just, if you think of popular music, that is a culmination of the Black musical experience,
Yeah.
where it came from, from jazz to blues music, which and to everything past that. It's all based in the Black American experience.
Yeah.
So it's no surprise to me that the popular music industry is going to show location this country is like and where that music came from,
Right.
and to honor that. On the classical side, it's totally different because this is traditional European culture that was taken up pretty seriously by mid 20th century in the States, and elitist, and it requires this long thing that it's hard to get. I mean, there's sort of barriers to getting that training, and then
Yes.
just not having representation in the orchestras of a little more Asians now, but that's because Asian cultures picked up on this European culture because they wanted to be westernized.
Right.
And that's a whole interesting other thing. But, there are organizations now in classical music and symphonic instrumental music, like that really, musicians, Black musicians, Latino musicians, and put them to the fore and give them the training and allow them the opportunities. And so it's becoming more and more common.
That's
But
good.
like access and seeing people like you on stage, like you say, I think is important to encourage young to, what they see and what they admire. You need to be able to see that and have your mentors and your heroes.
Well,
And
it
I hope changing in my
expands your,
industry.
yeah, but and not to interrupt you, but I think that it expands your dream sequence and your ability to see yourself doing certain things when you can see someone that looks like you doing that particular
Mm-hmm.
thing. It makes you believe that you too can be a part of that. And you're right. I think it's super important. And I was going to ask you that, and I'm glad that you said it. I think that so much of it is because classical music does require, like you said, this extensive training. And a lot of times that kind of access, that kind of financial capability didn't necessarily, come so easily to those communities. And it would be interesting to see that. Like, so even like in tennis, for instance, when the Williams sisters became tennis stars, it was so unusual because it's such an elitist
Yes.
sport. And here are these
Mm-hmm.
two Black girls who are literally crushing everybody because they were so
Yes.
amazing. But they, their parents gave them access to that world. And I think that as the economic sort of landscape begins to become more even, you'll see more of that. But yeah, it's interesting because I think in the music business in particular, like, so the production company, that does Women Rock, I mean, the woman who works the most for their production company, the girl who has the most shows, who makes the most money, is a Black girl. And I could never work as much as she does because the truth is I can't sing like her. And there will never come a day I can sing like her.
Right.
And so it's such a different experience than what's going on in the middle of the country. And there are a lot of people who have said that, the United States is a failed experiment for that reason, because there are so many different experiences happening in so many different parts of this country that we are not having a shared experience, no matter where you go. Mark and I were in Florida. We went to Florida right when the ban was lifted here in New York. We got the heck out of Dodge and we went to Florida, and we had to be stopped at the checkpoint, and we had to, tell them we don't live in New York City. We live up in the mountains, and we were cleared to go into Florida. So in case anybody's clutching their pearls, like, how could you? we got the okay. So, and we had been sheltering in place for almost 3 months. We literally hadn't seen anyone. So the reason I bring it up is to say, on that point, that people are having different experiences. Do you know, it was almost like this thing wasn't happening in Florida. It was crazy.
That's what I hear. Yeah.
Like, nobody was wearing masks. All the restaurants were open.
Yeah.
People were walking around like nothing was happening. The beaches. Now, we were on a private beach, but there were a lot of public beaches packed.
Yeah. We saw the videos. Yeah. Absolutely.
It's real. So what's happening in San Francisco now?
We'll start on lockdown, sheltering in place. Yeah. I mean, I think we're in phase 2B, right? Or 2B is coming on the 15th of June. So restaurants are doing takeout. Some businesses are open. You can't go, you can sell products to you. Some of the parks, some parking lots to those beaches and parks. But yeah, I mean, our gyms and salons aren't opening till August 15th. So essentially not a lot has changed. Anecdotally, I think, in California in general, the numbers are going up. So there's a lot of trepidation. Yeah. So, but my life is tremendously impacted, and it's really weird to be here and experience what we're experiencing. And for instance, I'm supposed to be in Dallas in September. For a concert with the Dallas Symphony. So you would think that might not happen. I mean, everything got canceled. It looks like it might happen because Texas has been open for, a month already. So their progression that's happening here in California is crazy. So, and it's more likely that my Asian and European gigs are going to come through in the fall versus stuff in the States. And in the States, I don't know. It depends on which state I'm working in, whether it's going to be possible. So
it's
the
so
impact
crazy.
Is mind numbing. It's insane.
Has it affected you financially? And it must have really affected you in a profound way.
Oh, it was devastating because I had my long before we went into lockdown, and a couple weeks later, it became evident that I wasn't going to work until at least September. So that's 6 months. And I am an independent contractor.
Me too.
So, insurances, essentially if I get paid. So when everything went south, I'm going to be out of 6 months of income.
Oof.
And household, my husband just started his business. So I make 75% of the income. So when that happened, we realized, living in San Francisco, we're not going to really be able to do it, to make it this year.
I know.
And, fortunately, I'm incorporated. We got a PPP.
Good.
I've applied for unemployment. When that runs out, we have a rainy day.
Right.
That, and that'll get us through the end of the year. But if I don't start working again, it's a whole rethink of, all right, so what are we going to do?
I'm exactly the
We
same
can't live
way. It's
here. Yeah.
terrifying. And you're in
Yeah.
a very expensive part of the country. What's crazy is we are too, but we are near like Saratoga Springs, New York.
Mm-hmm.
But we were in the city, and it was,
Yeah.
who knows what would have happened if we were still there. But luckily we were someplace where, we could move a little bit more freely. It's not cheap, but
Mm-hmm.
it was better. But like you, I had a little bit of a savings. I've never collected unemployment. I didn't even know how to
Mm-hmm.
do that. Um,
Right.
I mean, and not to like, but honestly, I've never done it. So, and I'm an independent contractor too. And it took me 3 months to get unemployment, 3 months.
Mhm. Yeah.
And
Yeah.
it was really starting to get scary. At first I was like, oh, it's fine. And then like month 2, I was like, well, it'd be good if it would like start coming in. By month
Mm-hmm.
3, I was like, are they going to send me money? Because
Yeah.
I don't know what's going to happen. So they finally started sending some money, but I'm like you, if I don't start working, I don't know what's going to happen. I
Yeah.
really don't. I don't know what to do. And, there's this like strange sort of, there are certain people in my life, and I won't say who they are, but there are certain people in my life who I think feel like, well, just go get a job. And I don't think people understand this is I'm a 40-year-old woman. Like, this is
Right.
my career.
Yeah.
This is not
Yeah.
what I
This
do.
is what we've been, yeah, this is what we've been doing for like decades. It's
I
not
didn't
just like
have
you turn around and
children,
start,
Yeah, I didn't
right, to
have
do this. Yeah.
yeah,
Mm-hmm.
like this is my life.
Yeah.
I'm not going to go and just start something else. That doesn't make sense. But at the same time, I really have had to adjust. And you've done the same thing. We both have been trying to stay creative during this. And you
Mm-hmm.
started
Mm-hmm.
a little bit of an interview show as well, right? You're doing something called Backstage Pass.
Mm-hmm.
And
Yeah.
and what is that? Talk about that a little bit.
Essentially I have all these interesting, why not interview them and sort of get, like the behind the scenes stories to get a sense of what it's like to be a musician and what that life is like and the things we go through,
Yeah.
the things we're going through, and sort of what drives people, what their passions are and what makes them tick. Because I don't people get to know performers at that intimate level. And it's nice to have that venue to be, okay, here's something that you didn't know about this person that they're going to talk about freely. And that's kind of cool. So
Yeah.
a lot of fun. And actually tomorrow I'm interviewing Nicole Stott, who's an astronaut. So she's not a
Oh
musician,
my
but
God.
I met her on a music gig and she's an artist. So, here's a person who can bring a different to what age, because I was backstage with her. But it's just, as you said, we're looking to keep engaged with ourselves, our audiences, the people, our colleagues as well. And I think that's incredibly important, and super challenging. And
Yeah.
as someone who's been on social media, but it hasn't been my major platform because I haven't had time,
I
I
know.
was on the road 35 weeks last season. Now to be like, okay, well, here's a platform from which I can, what I'm doing to present musical ideas, advocate for the other things that I'm passionate about, YouTube channel, and start doing other things. And, we have so much time
I
that I
know.
would have been traveling or performing or preparing. And all of a sudden it's like this desolate desert of nothingness. It's
I
like, well, what do you
know.
do? And I think part of the power of musicians is that we're creative and
Mhm.
we want things going forward and looking to the future. That's what I've been trying to do. I mean, nothing is monetized. So if throwing stuff at a wall and seeing what sticks in terms it engages me, how it engages audiences, and what the future might be. So
I love it. I
yeah,
love that you're
it's a
doing it.
weird boat to be in.
It's so weird. And I know, and I'm the same. It's like, it's a completely different skill set, right? To be able
Mm-hmm.
to sit and to chat and to, but we're curious people. And,
Mm-hmm.
and I see that there are some of us that have done this. I think you and I have taken a very similar path in the way that we kind of attacked this time. In some ways probably to stimulate ourselves, even
Mm-hmm.
though it was just one contract that you and I did together. I do think that we probably have a lot in common.
Mm-hmm.
We've lived our lives in a very similar way, and we've devoted ourselves to our career path. And much like you, there are times I have played 250 shows in a year, and
Mm-hmm.
I've
Yeah.
I've had a crazy life. And then to all of a sudden, and look, even if I've taken time off. I've never been told I can't work.
Right.
Right. And
Difference. Yeah.
it's such a strange thing. And I did the same thing. I was like, okay, well, I guess there were times we would turn the camera on when I was cooking dinner and we would just have a laugh and like talk about the recipe and talk to the, fans, and they were asking questions and I was answering questions. But you're right. It's just, and what I find at the end of this thing is that I have more content now on the internet that I've had in a really long time.
Yeah.
And you know what it's like. People Google you and they want to find stuff, and now they're finding stuff, and that's good. And it's all sort of current. But in terms of what happens next, I really have no idea. And at one point, I just sort of got scared. I just started to feel like, I'm not prepared necessarily to start over. And I don't know what this looks like next, but I think I still think we're in for a lot of change, and I think you're right in terms of the symphony stuff. We haven't heard a word from our producer. We have absolutely no idea. I had some shows obviously booked, not as many as before, but I had some shows booked for 21. And because my show's now been going for a few years, it starts to slow down.
Right.
Still had shows for 2021, and I have absolutely no idea what's happening. And you're right.
Yeah.
It will depend on the area and the, and how they're handling things. And have you heard anything? Do you know if they're making plans for seating people every other person or half capacity, or have you heard anything at all? Or are you just sort of making assumptions at this point?
There's something incredibly loud passing by.
Yeah, I was having that go on in my place too. I have some people.
It's a motorcycle gang.
Oh, okay. I love it.
Whole thing. Hello, California.
Yeah.
So here's the issue with orchestras. Orchestras themselves need to be socially distanced, so it's not just the audience. Right. So you can say, you can play to a 30% filled hall, but you can't have a 30% filled orchestra. Like it doesn't work that way. Right. So finding be played with a smaller ensemble or readjusting instrumentation.
Right.
And then the acoustic issues of you have to separate the players on stage, which is a huge technical hurdle to overcome. So, I mean, the inherent challenges, we want to come back, but what is on stage, not just what's in the audience, is going to have to look different, at least for the time being, until there's a vaccine. So, and then every orchestra is different. Some are like, okay, we're going to do 50% full hall. Some are saying it has to be below 30 each. Some orchestras have canceled all of 2021, gone.
Wow.
Manage the practical ramifications of what's going to be required. A lot of places have canceled the fall winter 21. So it runs the gamut. It depends on the organization. I mean, anecdotal with gigs from, people who like Dallas who want to go full force in September.
I love the Dallas Symphony. They're the best, actually. They're great.
Yeah. They want to go full force. Some orchestras want to do it with reduced forces, and some have just completely canceled gigs because they think that's going to look like. I mean, who the hell knows what's going to be happening come, autumn, or by the end of August. But the likelihood of stuff changing again in the fall going into winter, people are calling the second wave, that's really high. So it's just a lot of unknown with, and I think people make assumptions about, or they look like large organizations, and that they're infallible or that affected in a fundamental, and a lot of them are not going to survive this. And, people need to understand the organizations with a huge overhead. And some of them are going to go under or be severely reduced. And then that's a whole, just so many musicians who are, essentially working less or let go or not working at all. So, not to be like a downer.
No, I think it's real. I think it's one of the only times that, like, I had somebody on my show, I think it was the last episode, and she's a singer and she sings with a bunch of different production companies. She does a lot of different things. But I was like, my thing was like, we're screwed. And she was like, oh, I don't know. She's like, I don't think so. And I'm like thinking, I'm not trying to be a downer girl, but we're all fired. Like, I don't know what you
essentially we are all fired.
We're all fired. Yeah.
I actually blogged about this yesterday. I have a blog called the Coronavirus Diaries.
Ooh.
I blogged
Where
every
can
day.
people find that?
Coronavirusdiaries.net. I blogged for 77 days straight
Oh my
for,
God.
from the beginning of lockdown. But I wrote this post yesterday saying I have a lot of people not in the business who are telling me, when society opens up, people are going to be dying for live music. They just want to go to concerts. Your industry's it's going to be fine. And, I want to sort of shake them and say, do you know what happens in this industry? Like how far out things are booked, how rescheduling things from the spring impacts future booking. We rely on future stuff that might not happen. And, all the people who work behind, arrangers, producers, set design, writing, technical stuff, catering, I don't know, security, box office.
I
There's just
know.
like a huge number of in this industry who are not on stage who are so impacted.
I know.
And it's a huge industry, and we're going to be the last ones to come back. We're disproportionately affected because we're reliant on mass gatherings,
I
and that's
know.
the last thing that's going to come back. And people are like, well, you can play to a 25 or 50% filled hall. I'm like, well, we get 50% income.
Well,
How are you
that's
going to pay
just it.
people?
How are you going to
Right.
pay people? And how are you
Yeah.
going to continue? Like I think about and again, we haven't heard boo from them.
Mhm.
I've even heard from the yoga studio that I teach part-time at when I'm home. And I don't even, that's like kind of a loose relationship. And I've heard from them constantly in terms of what's going on. I
Right.
have not heard a word from my producer because who knows what they're thinking, but they've got like 15 shows. They've
Yeah.
probably got like 10 that are maybe, cooking, maybe 6 that were booked.
Mhm.
And I don't know what they're going to do because I can't imagine that they're able to stay afloat when they have all of these people under contract, all of these people who get paid a certain amount of money to
Right.
go do the thing. If the symphonies aren't going to be full capacity, that affects the amount of money they make, which will affect the amount of money they're willing to spend on productions
Yep.
for the pops,
Mhm.
which will affect our pay. I mean, this is what people don't really understand, but at the same time too, I am getting this other sort of strange response from people where it's like, well, you're going to have to do something else. And I don't know what that means or what that looks like. I mean,
Mhm.
composing obviously is something that I know you do. I was a songwriter for a long time as well. Songwriting for me might look a little different than it does for you, but I know songwriting for me, like I have to write and write and write and write, maybe take a year of writing
Mhm.
before I get like 1 or 2 songs on a couple of big records. Like that's kind
Right.
of,
Right.
and like it's happened for me and that's been great. And I've made some mailbox money and thank God for it. And that's kind of how I'm staying afloat now, but
Yeah.
it doesn't last forever. The cycles of that, it starts
Mhm.
to like
Yeah.
fall off. You have like a good, maybe depending on the song and depending on the record, but you have a good little cycle and then it
Right.
starts to fall off. I mean,
Yeah.
that's just it.
Yeah.
And the money's not what it was. If you've been
Right. Right.
right, that's changed quite a bit as well. And so you do a little bit of film scoring, is that right?
Yeah, I've done some film scoring. I did a project with ABC to do their Little Mermaid live. So I did the underscore for that. Actually, all the music for that.
Awesome.
And then I do a lot of this uh live to concert stuff where it's the film being projected music with the orchestra. That's a whole other thing. But like my my LA friends who are in the studio business and the studio musicians and all those guys, I mean, they can't work either because again, the orchestra is not a socially distanced animal.
Right.
So those are like suspended indefinitely. And those again, people who work on contracts. So they're definitely so yeah, it's really challenging to see what the future is going to hold. And songwriting, it's amazing. I think that you songwrite and like have this outlet because you can sing yourself. You can be the
Right.
creator and the performer.
Yeah.
I need an and so I
Right.
can create as much as I want to, but unless I have the ability to present that and perform that in some way, I need other people and groups of other people and not virtually. I need them live.
Oof.
So until I have that, there's not much I can do. So it's all about what content can I create that is virtual online.
It's
that
hard to monetize that though. Like, I don't know about you, but
it
everything that
is.
I've done is been for free. I
Hmm.
haven't been paid at all. I got paid for a couple of concerts that I did in the very beginning that was
Hmm.
donation based, and people were extremely generous. And I'm so grateful because especially when I wasn't getting any unemployment or anything, and I
Hmm.
didn't, and I have some
Yeah.
savings, thank God. I don't want to spend all of it. Thanks very much.
Yeah.
Cause but they did donate. But other than that,
Hmm.
none of this is monetized.
Yeah. Yeah.
So it's hard to make money this way. And I was just curious if you had any thoughts on that. Would you maybe start to kind of move your business to more of a digital online presence? And have you thought about monetizing? I mean, just for people who are listening, because I think there are a lot of people with this quandary. I think there are a lot of people
Hmm.
who are trying to rebuild and reimagine themselves in their careers. And trust me,
Hmm.
I know that you and I are probably no closer to the truth, than anybody else. But
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
but I was curious if you had any thoughts on that, maybe where the future lies in that for people like ourselves.
It's a good question. I think it really depends where your interests and skills lie.
Mm,
For instance, I've always been a writer, and I'm starting that hopefully will become a book.
good,
Um, this online content, I can't perform online, but I have taught online. So I've started to make these videos about the art of conducting.
good.
So that's another venue.
And that's
Um,
sarahhicks.com, right? You can
that's
find
my
that
website.
stuff.
If you go to YouTube, Sarah Hicks I'm Sarah Hicks Conductor everywhere.
Yes,
That's
and
my
and we're gonna
website.
put
Yeah.
up your social media
Yeah.
stuff as you're
Awesome.
talking, so yeah, everybody will see
Awesome.
all of it.
Cool. It's all Sarah Hicks Conductor. I have this corporate presentation about how conductors are like CEOs, and essentially what it's like to have a vision, communicate that vision, and create consensus. So I'm sort of developing that more. So I used to do that live. So figure what that would look like virtually or in as video, looking at things like that. And then I have this interest in wellness, but also it's really mental health and advocating for neurodiversity
Mm,
and how music really impacts mental health and how they can in hand enhance each other. So sort of figuring out what I can do with that as well. So
that's incredible.
using the opportunity to see what my other interests are outside of just pure performance and music, directions I can take that in, and trying a lot of things to see what's going to garner the most interest, and then finding a way, expand on that and to hopefully monetize that so that there is an actual product. Whereas right now, I feel like I'm just
Me
trying
too.
stuff,
Throwing
just
things.
trying everything
Yeah,
and saying, yeah, hey, how do people react to this? And,
yeah.
that makes sense to say, okay, I can focus my product to this, the way to sell that, rather than right now it's like, hey, I'm Sarah Hicks and I do all these things. It's really hard to say what that one thing, create a product out of that. So
I think a
yeah.
lot of people are trying to figure it out. I think even the big companies, right? So like, television is being taken over by the internet. Advertisers are not advertising as much
Mhm.
on podcasts anymore because there's so many of them. So it's like it's this constantly movable, switching, morphing thing. And I think that being sort of being flexible with it, I think is a good thing. But I think that being online in general, there isn't, how do I put this? The industry has changed to the point, especially particularly my end of things as a songwriter and as a pop and rock kind of
Mhm. Mhm.
background, which is, I always say I'm a mongrel. That's like where I come from. I ended up in the symphonies completely by accident and because I could sing Carole King songs, and I might have been like the only one who walked into the audition who could do that. So I got the job. But trust me, every time I walk into a symphony, I'm like, this is terrifying. And I am having the best time. But I'm really a rock chick, I'm a rocker chick,
Mhm.
and I've been in
Yeah, yeah.
bands and I've played with everybody and I've had the most beautiful career, but it's changed so much and it has become an industry, unfortunately, that is difficult to earn money
Mhm.
in the best of times.
Right, right.
It's
And
becomes
now it's the worst of
and now
times.
it's the worst of
Yeah.
times, and we're all online and we're all
Mhm.
trying to work this thing out. And there's more and more restrictions, and there are less and less people spending money. And I think that unfortunately, people have been used to getting free content
Mhm. Mhm.
for all the way from music to video content, that to try to convince people to pay for things, it doesn't mean it's not possible. I'm just saying that this, I believe, is probably the trick. how to get people to value the work and
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
understand, what we're doing here. And that just because, because I can Google anything now and get it for free online. And
Mm-hmm.
it's very difficult to put a price on someone with your education and your background giving lessons or giving information. It's so valuable. People don't
Mm-hmm.
realize is
Mm-hmm.
the kind of you went to Harvard. I mean, people forget really, and people don't know the, you know, that's not free, man. Like, you went to the best
No.
schools and you have all of this experience. You've done these unbelievable things, and to be able to tap into your well has to be valued financially. People have to compensate you for that. But finding a way to do that's really difficult. I even think this production company that I'm working with right now, Adam is listening in, but they're trying to figure it out. They do podcasts and they're doing live broadcasting, and they're trying to figure out how to bring live performances online. And I think that they're trying to figure out how to make money at that too. It's everybody kind of gives each other the same look when we start talking about it. It's like, how are we going to make money? We don't know.
Yeah. Oof. Well, I
Yeah.
mean, I guess the long and the short of it is, whichever part of the music industry you're in, most of ours from live music and tour.
Yeah.
And
That's where the
if
income is.
yeah, where the income is, and if there's no way to duplicate it on an online platform,
No.
in digital media, because we just can't. As you said, there's too much free content to, you know, against. And yeah, I think that's the huge challenge. I mean, I hope in the end is that eventually we come back to being able to do these live performances, and that, in that idealized world, yes, people are going to be dying to see that stuff, right?
Yeah.
It's an eventuality, but it's going to be next month or 6 months. It might not even be in a year,
No.
right? So in the meantime, what do we create for ourselves that is, financially feasible, gives us some income that is related to what we're trained to and what we have been doing for decades, that people want to encounter, enjoy, and partake of? And how do we disseminate that? It's like there's so many questions.
Well, I did think about you because I thought about the fact that you were in San Francisco, right? That most expensive city in the country, arguably.
Mm-hmm.
And I was in Laurel Canyon in Los Angeles, probably the
Mm-hmm.
second most expensive place to
Yes.
live in the world.
Word. Yeah.
And so now I'm in upstate Europe. I actually think more and more people will have to disperse from these
Mm.
high income, very expensive areas with high taxes. I don't think that we're going to be able to live like that anymore, and that's sad and it's hard, but I think downsizing, understanding that maybe we're not going to make the money that we made,
Mm-hmm.
and having to, and look, I always said this when the industry went digital. And people, I said, if you were pre-Napster or post-Napster,
Right.
you were a
Mm-hmm.
songwriter, right? And so so the pre-Napster, all of my pre-Napster friends made money that they can live on for the rest of their lives. All of us post-Napster people made money, but we're going to hustle until we're dead. Like, that's
Yeah.
just, it
Mm-hmm.
is what it is, and it's fine. But what I think it did, and I always say, I think it separated who's really doing it for the love and the passion, and who kind of was
Mm-hmm.
doing it for the money.
Yeah.
And I think what you'll see in our industry is there'll be a little bit of the trimming of the fat in that way. People won't stay in it who weren't really in it because
Mm-hmm.
they have
Mm-hmm.
no choice. Like, this is just
Right.
who I am. I can't do anything else. And I've done the ebbs and flows in my industry already. I've already,
Mm-hmm.
I've done very well. I've had excellent, amazing years, couple years in a row. And then I've had really lean years where I've had to live off of my money, and it is what it is. And I talk about this a lot, and I think that this is another one of those come to Jesus moments for
Mm-hmm.
musicians. Like, where are you at in it? Is this something that you can do for the rest of your life, even if you're not going to see the same kind of income that you once saw?
Right.
Will
Right.
you still do it? Have you had any of those conversations with your musician friends about people who maybe are thinking about leaving?
I mean, that's a good question. If you're in a full-time professional orchestra, you're on salary, right? So
Right.
that's a whole different conversation. I know a lot of arts administrators, they're on salary. So there's, I have a whole lot of friends who corporation. So, they're getting, some people are furloughed, there's like pay cuts, but they're still getting paid. That's one conversation. They're not going to quit
Right.
their jobs, right?
No, right, because they're safe, right?
They're safe for now.
For now.
If their organization doesn't go under. For those of us who are independent contractors, it is a come to Jesus moment because, a lot of us do other things besides perform and on purpose, so that we have, personal, have to look at them as, okay, this was something I did as a side thing because it was interesting to me. Now we're looking at it as okay, is this a direct professionally? And I think a lot of us independent contractors in my side of the business are having to think that what else can we do, not completely switch over, but to say, how can we supplement?
Yeah.
And that's a challenging question. And, I have my doubts too about like, holy crap. I mean, how long can I do this? What's it going to look like? How many years is it going to take for the industry to come back anywhere near the money I was making? You know, am I too old to wait for that? Is it going to take
Thank
10
you.
years? And like, what am I going to be? It's like, yeah, I'm middle-aged reason because I dedicated to my career and right. And then I have a lot of friends and older, they're late 50s, 60s who are absolutely, work in the studio scene in LA. And, all their stuff is gone. They have no assurances. They don't know when they can retire, like what's happening in the next 5-10 years. So there's so many different ways that we're all affected by this in the music business. And it really depends where we are.
Yeah.
And like for me, as I said, but I can't quit music,
Right.
that's just part of how I am.
Yeah.
I just
Right.
can't express it
It's
anything
how
else
you're
is,
wired. Yeah.
yeah, yeah, exactly. So I need that to be able to, like, right, to have music. But how do I use that in other ways? How can I incorporate my other skills and interests? Because I don't know if I can just be a musician anymore. And that's a
Yeah.
scary thought, right?
So scary. I know who
So,
I feel sorry for. I really feel sorry for the younger musicians who were
oh my
just starting,
God.
you know what I mean? Who really were, who kind of made that decision and were like, this is what I'm going to do, but haven't
Hmm.
cut their teeth yet. And we're really looking forward to that and are kind of seeing that dream, because listen, as sad as it would be if I had to stop, I did it. Like, and
Hmm.
I got to do it on a big scale, and you got to
Yeah.
do it on a big scale and you got to do it full time and you got to really, there were so many parts of the business that we got to enjoy that unfortunately the younger generation coming up may not ever really get to
Yeah.
see. And
Hmm.
I've been thinking a lot about them, and the disappointment that you can feel. I've already heard a few of them just be like, well, maybe
Yeah.
I should stop.
Well, yeah. I mean, I see a lot of kids coming out of conservatory. I mean, you see college graduates right now, and you're like, what are they going to do?
What are they going to do?
But like conservatory graduates, like it's a niche career with
Yeah.
not a lot of opportunities, and it's tougher to break into it than almost anything. And with the diminishment of any organization and performing arts venues, and it's like, where are you going to find work?
Yeah.
So, I'm terrified, and I younger colleagues who were my students once, but just starting in the business is like, I don't know what to tell. There's
Yeah.
not going to be work for a long time. There's not going to be work for those of us who have ages and have connections and networks and producers and agents and managers that we work with. What about these kids who are just coming out?
Yeah. I
I
mean,
don't
we have
know.
so many
And
beaten paths at this point, right? There are so many avenues that it's
mm-hmm.
scary for people like us, but like, there are 50 things that you have done in your career and 500 phone calls that you can make. And I'm the same. And, regardless of what ends up happening, I can act like there's so many
Mm-hmm.
things that I can do creatively, but who knows if any of it will work out. But you're right. It's like these kids who haven't even made their contacts and haven't even sort of proven themselves. Like, you get the call, like you are the woman that gets the call. I get the call. Like we both know that. So
Mm-hmm.
there's something to be said for that. These kids haven't proven themselves yet. And so it's very difficult. And I know that this is a tough conversation to have. And in some ways it's probably a difficult one to have. It's probably a difficult one to listen to if you're a musician. But I
Mm-hmm.
also know that there are people who have come to me I think that there needs to be a little bit of a reality check. Like,
Mhm.
I think people have to know that people in our position don't know what's going to happen, and that we're not trying to sugarcoat it, and that it is a time of adjustment, and every single other musician that I've spoken to, and I've had a lot of different people from a lot of different walks of life here, and I
Mhm.
would love to speak to people from different industries too, and have a little bit, but mostly because my connections are in the music business. It's been musicians, but what they've all said is, one of the best things that you can do for yourself as somebody who wants to have a career in the arts is to learn how to diversify, to
Mhm.
understand that you can't only just do one thing and sit
Right,
around and
right.
wait for someone to hire you.
Mhm, mhm.
And
Absolutely.
that's changed quite a bit, and changed over time, but that now especially is something, right? Wouldn't you agree?
Yeah, and, in the best of times, I've always discouraged my students, and that sounds terrible, but I've told them, "Do you really wanna be a musician, conductor?" I discourage it and else that you can or want to do, because
Right.
that has to be the level of commitment that you're willing to have to really make it, and even then, there's, some luck and some happenstance and some timing involved.
Right.
So, had those things speaking a year ago, I wouldn't encourage anyone to, enter this business. And now it's like, yeah, it's even worse. But to speak to diversifying, you have to have multiple skills. And we're in a situation where you can't just perform. You have to do other things by necessity right now.
Yeah.
And I think what I see is my older colleague able to adapt to that and still sort of being bent on, well, here's what I do. I arrange and conduct,
That's
and
it.
I don't know what else to do. I don't know what else to do either, but I'm trying, because you have to.
Right.
This is adapt or die. But I think is an attitude that those of us who are willing to sort of take those chances and have some savvy in terms of using virtual platforms and social media and all that stuff, we're able to sort of pivot to that. But I really worry about my older colleagues who are not pivoting at all and are just really concerned and not being able to do anything.
Yeah.
Possibility in the current situation. And then, hopefully for younger musicians, even entering into this completely new environment, maybe it will people to their careers are like in a very different way,
Yeah.
to say, I can't just do this. Look
No.
at everyone else doing everything right now, because they have to do this too, looking into the future.
This is what I've been
So,
telling people. I'm like, listen,
yeah.
you don't get to just sit home and wait for somebody to hire you to play your instrument. That you can't. If you have any other interests, even if it's
Mhm.
learning how to put content up on the internet, learning how to build websites, learning how it can be within the world that you love, but any other kinds of skills. When I left my band, I was in a band for a long time, and we were
Mhm.
signed, and it was we did the whole thing, and that was great. I left because I really hated, I'll be honest, I hated being famous. I hated it so
You
much.
should tell people that, because people
Oh,
don't believe that,
they don't believe me. And people still, I'll tell you, there's certain people who will never forgive me for it. Like, they don't get it. I left a
Mhm.
very big life, and potentially a massive life. And I just hated being famous. I didn't like it. So I really did, but I love singing. And so there, and I
Right,
loved
right.
writing, and I do like performing, but I like to have control
Mhm.
over the work I'm doing, over the
Right.
perception, over the people I work with. And it just got to a point where I felt like I was a commodity and no longer a
Mm.
human. And I didn't really love the people I was working with anymore. And I felt like I was swimming with sharks, and
Mhm.
it was and I walked away from something that a lot of people wouldn't walk away from, and I
Right.
completely get that. And I also know that a lot of it was my immaturity. I wasn't able to handle it at the time. I was very young and emotional, and
Mm.
precious about my songs, and
Right.
all that shit. So, but what I was going to say is that I left the band, and I wanted to keep going, but I wanted to do it on my own terms. But it forced me to learn how to build a website, It
Mm-hmm.
forced me to learn how to produce a record. It forced me to learn how to, do a lot of book my own shows if I had to, or put a thing together and be a producer. And I had to learn how to do all of it. And it was hard. A lot of it was
Yeah.
hard. I make my own graphics. I do all of
Mm-hmm.
it now because I had to, but it's great because it's coming in handy now.
Right, right, right.
So now it's like this thing is being filmed by my producers, BeTerrific, and they're awesome. But like, I'm making all the thumbnails for YouTube, and I'm making all
Mm-hmm.
the graphics for the promotions, and
Yep.
I don't have to hire anybody to do that. I built the website, I'm doing the logos, and it's good because I don't have to spend money to
Right,
hire, right?
exactly.
Like I can
Well, and also you have artistic control over the final product because
That's
it's
right.
your vision, it's your graphics, it's your everything. So
Yeah.
it presents like a whole package actually, which is
Yeah,
great,
it
right?
is great. And I
It's
and I think it just goes to what I was saying is like you have to know how to do that stuff, and you can't it is not the industry that it once was. When
mm-mm.
I was signed, it's like I had a product manager and I had like the radio guy in every
Mm-hmm.
market, and I had like,
Right.
right? Um and that stuff just doesn't it doesn't exist anymore. You have to kind of know how to do all of it. And you're
Yeah.
being
I
super
mean,
creative. I love this game that you're playing. You do a thing on your Instagram page, which is at Sarah Hicks Conductor, Sarah with an
mm-hmm.
H, everyone, but we'll put it up so people will see it, where you're playing a piece of music and you're asking your fans to guess what it is. I love that.
Yeah, musical mystery. It's up on YouTube as well. So I
Oh, it
do
is.
different ones on each platform, but I think it's a way to engage and it's always symphonic music, but it could be from a film score. It
Right.
could be from from a TV ad from the 90s. Like there's just a lot of ways to electronic music and to say, hey, this sounds familiar to you. Do you know where it comes from?
Right.
It's to remind people this is orchestral music
Yeah.
around us. And I want to keep people engaged with that in
Yeah.
whatever way I can. And it's also fun for me to like dig through stuff and be like, okay, where is like the secondary melody in this film score that, people might not
I
know straight
love
off, but they
that.
might be like, oh, it sounds like something, right?
Right.
It's just a way to keep myself interested, but also to remind people that symphonic music is great. It's all over us. It's all around us. It's part of popular culture. It's important. I love it. I want it to come back and it's going to
Yeah.
come back. But in the meantime, just to be like, hey, you listen to this stuff all the time. Guess what this is?
Yeah, and
My
you're so
favorite
cool.
movie.
Like, I think that you're such a wonderful face for it too, because you're so beautiful and you're so cool. And like, you're a woman, which is another thing that you don't see very often. We had a female, only two in the whole time that we've been doing the show. And I've been doing the show for
Mm,
3 years. We had one that's a Canadian woman,
mhm.
Melanie. I don't know if you know Melanie, but she's beautiful, amazing female conductor as well. She's French Canadian, and then yourself, and it's so rare. I mean, that's the other thing. As a woman in this industry,
Mhm.
has it been tough to get work, or have people kind of been like, "Oh, wow, this is great. We need more women." I mean, what's the attitude?
I mean, it goes two ways. So I've been in this industry for like 20 years at this point,
Right.
right? So it's very different for the women who are coming up right now. In the past, I'd say 5 to 7 years, it's a very different climate.
Okay.
Acceptance, and because it's visible, there are more women doing it, it becomes part of the norm. When I left music school and was just starting, there were very few women to look up to. So I did feel like I sort of had to forge my own paths. I was met with, I famously remember this is my conducting teacher told me that Asians are not expressive and
Oh,
women are weak, so I would never have a career. So it was half in jest because he was an old German dude, but the fact that that attitude existed, it was super challenging. And I did come against people who commented on what I was wearing, what my hair looked like. I grew up 15 years ago, more 20 years ago, maybe, where I was in an opera pit where the podium was really high. So the musicians were really low. And the first violinist was like upskirting me, right?
right.
And just stuff like that that happens that reminds you that it's still maybe even now a challenge, and getting commentary on what your wardrobe is like, and questions about your authority,
Mm.
especially for those of us who look younger than we are.
That's
You
right.
know, they're like,
I
oh, who is this kid? It's like,
who's
oh God.
I'm not a
Yeah,
kid.
I've been doing
Yeah.
this for 20, you know, let me tell you what I've seen. So, you know, to go against that too is challenging. So, I mean, I tell women now, you know, excellence is gender and colorblind. I mean, if you are good at what have a calm authority and know how to tell people no,
Yeah,
and also convince people to do what you want them to do,
that's
like
right.
it doesn't matter who you are. They're going to eventually accept your authority or your knowledge or just where you're coming from. And as a conductor, that's what we do. We basically say, here's where I'm coming from.
That's right.
This is what we want to create together. Let's do it. Come with me. So if you can accomplish that in any way, I don't, you know, gender, race, all of that
Yeah.
culture, it doesn't matter
You were
in my ideal
amazing. No,
world.
and you were amazing because I remember even our drummer, Jake, who plays a lot of the shows with us, he doesn't play all of them, but he plays a lot of them. He even commented, he's like, she's so strong. She's amazing. I'm like, I know. What I love about her is exactly what you said, your quiet authority. There was no question who was in charge, but at no point was their vibe, you know, that wasn't like, you know, because look, I've had it happen. I mean, I've grown up in this industry as well. And I was always a band leader and I was always the songwriter. And, you know, we were an all-female rock band. And so we would walk in and, you know, people thought that we were the Go-Go's, not to put them down. Right. But we weren't the
Right.
Go-Go's. We were a legitimate band with really good musicians and we were writing really good songs. And, you know, eventually our, you know, comeuppance, it was, we were playing with the best and you could see that eventually. But in the beginning, people were walking like, ugh, a girl band, and the sound guys would roll their eyes and the whole thing. And I had a chip on my shoulder. There's no question that I did. Right. And so I had a different way of approaching making people respect me. Over the years, I realized walk softly and carry a big stick, where it's like, keep your head down and just do the work and people will realize themselves. You don't have to do anything. You just have to be. My thing was, I just wanted to be a band, not a girl band.
Right.
Like, so what you're saying, right? You just wanted to be a conductor, not a female conductor. You just want to be seen as a conductor. And that's fair enough. And that was my thing too. And we were always put on like girl festivals and girl night and regardless of the genre of music, whether it made sense with the other bands. So like female was a genre, you know.
Imagine, right? Yeah.
That's what it was. And it used to drive me crazy. So we would be a rock band, but we would be on with a disco band because they were all female and it was girl night. And it used to make me crazy. But I know what you're saying. And I think that now, all of these years later, because I too have been in the business for 20 years, I don't have to work so hard. People, first of all, my reputation, you know, precedes me always. And even if it doesn't, even if people haven't heard of me, or I don't have a need to tell anybody anything. I'm going to go in, I'm going to do my work. And I also understand that everybody in the room deserves respect too. And that they've all been there a long time too. And that they need to feel that you can share the oxygen with them. And that a lot of times I think that arrogance can be replaced for that. You know, we use arrogance to mask our, don't you judge me because I'm a woman. And it's like, you know what, actually, you know, and I really admired the way that you handled everyone, you know, the way that you came in and, you were so good and so capable and clearly so talented, but so confident, just quietly confident in the most amazing way. And everybody respected you immediately.
Which is great. And, you know, I aim to do that because if people are comfortable, have to be they can do their best work. So as I see it, I'm trying to set up my orchestra, you know, whoever it is in front of me, I want to set them up for success. So whatever I can do for that to happen, it generally comes with someone who is going to let you be your best. And for that to happen, I've got to be a rock.
That's right.
So that there's just no doubt that I'm there for you. You need something. Here's your beat. You're lost. Here it is. You're too loud. I'll tell you are. You know, it's just all the information. And yeah, that's really how I approach it. I mean, the flip side is, you know, if we get, you know, women will be called hysterical if we get too loud, or we're called, you're a bitch for saying that, you know, for what a male conductor or leader could say, and no one would think twice, right? So that is learned behavior.
Yeah.
It's not really completely an equal playing field, and that we do have to give consideration where men might not have to. But I'm okay with that because I figured out my formula that fits the way I work and my personality, and I found my success in that. So,
Yeah.
we all have to be okay with who we are, where we come from, the things that we have to butt up against because of gender, which still exists. But if we can still work in the middle of that,
Yeah.
then, I think that's the best we can do.
Yeah, I think that there's a wisdom in that, and I think that people feel comfortable when you do, and it's just what you said, and that I'm not easily rattled, and that you can't necessarily anymore take my confidence. I'm too old for that, and I've been around too long, and I can still feel it, and I'm sure that you can too. It's like there are times I can feel people's eyes on my ass. I know that like,
Right.
you know what I'm saying? It doesn't hurt that we're attractive or whatever. But the minute we start doing the work, I think that stuff falls away. People go, oh, they go, oh,
right.
oh, oh.
Mm-hmm.
I
Yeah.
see.
Yeah.
This person knows exactly what they're doing. And
Right.
and so then it's like kind of gift with purchase in a way, it's like, yeah, and
I love that.
easy on the eyes, but actually very capable and very competent, and
Right.
easy to work with, and not hysterical. And there's nothing worse than that, because I agree. It's like that thing of the minute you become emotional in any way, you're kind of you get written off. And I think as a younger performer, especially, like I said, a bit volatile, very precious about my work. Admittedly, I make no bones about it. I know exactly who I was at that time. I was not ready to swim in that pool. And to this day, it's not something I would do. So I don't want to do that anymore.
Right.
I was not equipped to do that. And instead of having sort of the steady center to handle all that stuff, I would become emotional, and it just you completely lose credibility. So advice to young women, whether it's fair or not, it doesn't matter. That's not what we're talking about. We're talking about being respected and being taken seriously, and sometimes that means a little bit even more of a steady hand than anybody else.
That's the reality of it.
Yeah. Just even that much more. I wanted to ask you, before we go, you brought your little doggie with you, Pinkerton. You're beautiful. Now, what's the breed again of Pinkerton?
He is a papillon, which means butterfly in French, because of the ears. They look like little butterflies.
He's gorgeous. And he just had, and I think here comes my boyfriend. He's going to bring mine around, I think, because he just heard me say something. She just came from the dog park. I'm just warning you, but that's Lucy.
Oh, cutie. Oh my God.
That's my baby.
Through and like pet her little black nose.
She's my little sweetheart. This is my travel companion. We talked about it. I brought her everywhere. And this is Mark is a bass player. He's in a couple of the shows. This is Sarah. But I wanted to ask you, because Pinkerton had some surgery. What happened with him?
So he T-boned a larger dog T-boned him in the dog park at high speed, and he's 10 pounds. Another dog was like 70.
Oh, no.
So it fine, but it knocked out some cervical discs, essentially. So he had to have emergency surgery to get those put back in. And, he was paralyzed. His back legs were paralyzed, and your animal to like the emergency vet, and they're not moving, and they're panting, and they're panicked. And, because of lockdown, we can't go in to the vet. You have to hand them off.
I was
terrified. I was running to get the car because this happened in the dog park, and I'm like crying and running and trying to get the car keys, and just in this like fugue state of I can't deal right now. It's like everything that COVID, like no work, no finances. My dog, it's paralyzed. He's paralyzed.
And that's
he had
thousands and thousands of dollars, by the way, everybody who's listening.
Cassidy, it was almost $20,000.
I know.
And
I know.
It happened to me. My amazing friends set up a GoFundMe page, and we're basically at goal. Yeah, they did it like the next day, and I was like so grateful. And there was an outpouring of just generosity and love from so many people across the
I don't
country
even know
because
how I
everyone
missed it. I found the video of you trying to get him to sort of, he's on the
oh yeah,
soft carpet. I
mhm.
saw the recovery video. That's
Yeah,
all
yeah,
I
yeah,
saw. And I was like, what
yeah,
happened to Pinkerton? So somehow
yeah,
I missed it, but thank God people,
yeah.
what
Came
a
out of the
beautiful
woodwork.
thing. Oh my God.
It was, but I think to sort of tie that all together, it's the impact that you make on people that's really important. And the fact that I took my dog and we traveled all over the country and, created these relationships with people that were positive and impactful. And we had these connections. And that's the reason that all these people around the country were like, this is all I got, but please take it. Here's
Oh,
my, here's my $10.
yeah,
Here's
because
my,
people are struggling. So to think
yeah,
that
they
they
are,
did
but they
that,
were
oh,
like, I loved meeting your dog. I love meeting you, and we just want to do something. And to
yeah.
me, that really spoke to the goodness of people, the importance of wherever we go to creating those connections to all in this together and using music to do that has always been my mission. And
Oh,
that was a great, like experience to be reminded I'm I'm doing the work. The
yeah,
work is working and, I've impacted the in turn want to help me and that's the circle of karma
that's
that
right.
keeps everything okay. And
Yep.
that really is sustaining me to know that there's so much love
That's such
and
a
I've been
beautiful,
part of
beautiful
creating
story
that.
that you
Yeah.
totally have. And, he's the sweetest dog. He's so beautiful. And when I
Yeah.
saw that and I saw that he was a little, I thought, what happened? Because I know,
Yeah.
because Lucy's my travel companion and I always brought her everywhere. And, as she's gotten older, I've stopped doing that at quite as much, but
Yeah.
I also have a little bit more of a support system now than I did for a long time. I was
Mm,
single and kind of had to bring her everywhere. And
right.
she's going to be 11, but Lucy had bladder stones. And
Oof.
when she was about 7, and
Mhm.
she, had to have a very major surgery, and she
Oof.
got them out there. We were living in Southern California, and I will never totally be 100% sure, but I think it was from I had always given her bottled water just because she's my only child, and
Uh-huh.
I make her food
Right,
like
right.
I'm insane, and so she's my only child, so I always gave her bottled water. But then I got a filter for my tap, and I was like, well, we'll both drink filtered water now because we're saving the
Mhm.
planet. It's too many
Right,
bottles.
right.
It's not good. Do you know that probably within 6 months she had bladder stones? Yeah, I
Interesting.
know. And so
Whoa.
I don't know for sure. I can never prove that, but she hasn't
Mhm.
had them, knock wood, since. But they
Huh.
literally have to remove their bladder, take out the stones, wash the bladder,
Oof.
and put the bladder back in. And
Oh my
again,
God.
we were about 12 grand by the time we
Yeah,
were
yeah.
done. And it was, my mom helped me, thank God. Like, it was a very scary time. But uh I was gonna say people don't realize it's cash money, people, when your
Oh,
dog
yeah.
has something like that, it's not the same as humans.
They don't have insurance. I guess you can
No,
get pet insurance, but
it
you
doesn't
don't think
work.
about getting
It
pet
doesn't work.
insurance.
I've tried.
Yeah,
It doesn't work. I had it. They don't cover
yeah,
anything. The first time I needed to use it, they
yeah.
didn't cover it. And I was like, that's it. I let it lapse. And then, yeah, no. So it ends up being, it's hard, but I'm so glad that he's okay. And I'm so glad that we got a chance to talk. And
Me too.
I hope that we cross paths again out there, and
I do
if I
too.
hope we can work together again. I loved working with you.
Ditto. And, I'm a lot of shows right now. So, your name keeps or I keep bringing it up. I'm like, I met this
Oh my
this
God.
so yeah.
Thank you.
Hopefully, when we can get back to producing stuff that we'll be able to do stuff
I
together.
would I would drop everything to work with you anytime. And likewise, I think about you a lot too, that maybe we could write together or something. It's
Yeah.
certainly something we could do even remotely. I've
Yeah.
started a little project, so you never know. Like, it would be fun to have some sort of something maybe on one of these rock songs, to see what we could collaborate on, to do some
Yeah.
sort of rock
Yeah.
orchestra situation.
I love it. I'm down. I'm in.
Okay. All right.
Just let me
Good.
know.
You're a sweetheart. I'm so happy to see that you're doing well. And please do stay in touch with me. Everybody, Sarah Hicks, the amazing, the beautiful. Thank
Aw.
you for doing this.
Thank you.
I'll talk to you soon.
Bye.
Bye.